Nah. Alright. As promised, there's going to be a post about Shubenacadie, ground nuts, water potatoes, duck potatoes, hog nuts. It's got a bunch of names, but I don't know where to start actually. It's a really long story how I even knew they existed, because it's not like I went to the woods and picked them up and knew exactly what they were. I went out looking for them this time and followed some raccoon tracks along the Willistic River right before the Nashwauk. And then when I'm following the tracks, I know that raccoons eat these and they need to eat, so logically, a raccoon's gonna look for food, and he finds food. I'm gonna find his tracks where he found food, and then find food. So that's a really cool thing, and that's important. But there's a bunch of ecological stuff to it, a bunch of animal stuff, a bunch of farm rights things. But context right now, it's a pandemic. We're in New Brunswick. New Brunswick has very low cases. There should be some second wave stuff happening in December. There's opening up things. There's possible collapse of society and all this other stuff that we really just don't have any control over. But we're gonna all be in this together and trying to do something. But a year ago, it wasn't like this. A year ago, I had a house with a girl. It's not about the girl, but I had a house and a life that I was secure with, and I thought was going to be my life. And I thought I was going to be a journalist, and I thought I was going to do this, this, and this. And then that all fell apart. Not in a bad way. That fell apart because it was supposed to. Kind of like a bad. Things fall apart. So my life as I knew it changed when I decided to go out to Shubenacadie in Nova Scotia.
Yo, we're in it. We're in Nova Scotia and it's raining. Fuck yeah! This is absolutely beautiful. One sec, trying to get my fucking. There you go. Absolutely stunning. Gorgeous. Gorgeous. Big marquee. We're gonna go join the land defense, the water defenders. We're gonna tell their story. We're gonna try and not get arrested. Yeah, I can't control the last one. I'm gonna try my best, but hopefully I don't get my ass arrested. Alright, so I think this is a microphone. I hope it's a microphone, because this might have to be a shot. I just finished sitting on the roof of the shed outside. So the shed way over there. I was sitting on the roof of that because they're putting up new pieces to the fence that they've been working on. And they have 3 security guards come out just to watch me, which is really, it's sweet because, like, I didn't realize I was that scary that I need 3 security guards. And then they've got the spotter watching the 3 security guards, and then one guy doing all the work. So really the company is paying 4 people to deal with me, they don't even know me, and 1 person to do the job, which is really weird and a little unfair, probably a waste of money. But, you know, whatever. It's kind of funny. It shows that they really have no composure on the job and that they're nervous. But also, since they're so nervous, they're doing weird shit. So I'd be really scared if I was younger and not as smart as I am. I mean, I watch my ass get arrested now or something stupid for saying that. But, like, anybody else that would engage with them or give them what they want would be fucked. Because they would just either end up in jail or this or that. Because it's like the river. It's like they built their own river, and once you get caught up in it, they're going to push you one way or another, and they don't really want swimmers. So right now what I'm doing is I'm chilling out on the roof of my little shed, use the ladder to get up there, listening to some tunes, and going to be there till they finish the fences today. So that's about it. That's my job and my purpose today. Whew, last day, and it's going to be a big one. Actual activism, and I'm surrounded by blinding, beautiful sunlight. Woo! It's gonna be wild.
I was going through a difficult time in my social life, in my personal life, in my academic life, and I decided to pick up and go visit Treaty Chuck House a year ago to see the Grassroots Grandmothers with Doreen Bernard and so many amazing friggin' people, like, that I can't tell you about because of pending investigations and a whole friggin' cabal of federal oversight and manipulation, and then backroom deals with the Nova Scotian government trying to manipulate and then introduce a doctrine of conquered peoples to destroy treaty rights. And it's a whole thing that isn't covered or isn't in the daily, that should be in the daily, but it's been like this for well over hundreds of years because it's how the manipulation of land and seizure of power works, is we're kept ignorant. But specifically ground nuts from Shubenacadie. Shubenacadie, the name literally implies this is where ground nuts grow. It's a determinant in language. Again, the importance of language and culture and sociological stuff comes out here, in human rights and like identity as an ethnic group for Mi'kmaq peoples and Wabanaki peoples comes out of names and words and artifacts that are all around us that we can choose to ignore, or we can choose to pick up and hold the responsibilities of and internalize in like our own personal bundles. It's a whole other thing. But see, what I'm telling you about this story is every single part of this is connected and grows and changes just like me. And so a year ago, I have a big ass nose, holy shit. A year ago, I went to the Grassroots Grandmothers with Doreen and people that I can't name because I don't know how that's gonna go. Even though the world's ended, it's still a big fucking bloodbath, and people are fighting to take land and do stupid things. And like, just look at down south right now with the Sioux and the Navajo, and pipeline access being forced by the military of the United States government, and possibly in Canada. I mean, the Wet'suwet'en are still dealing with huge issues in the Unistoten camps, and this is all indigenous issues, and it sounds like gobbledygook, but you literally aren't educated about this, so I have to sit down like a phone book and teach you how to operate it and understand it when it's the whole thing. So back to the ground nuts. At the Hayes Teaching Farm, they're planted in the ground yesterday, and they're growing. A raccoon came by and got some off the other bank, which means they're good. That's a good sign. Raccoons eat them, so they're healthy. Anyways, so I'm planting these things. They're old tubers. They're super nutritious, they're beneficial to you, they come from this ecosystem, they're a species that's important. Basically, what I'm trying to get at is you have a responsibility the same as I do when you live somewhere to live with that place, because you're a part of it. You are literally an agent in a network. You have a responsibility to the place you live in, even if it's not your home, it's your home for a bit. And that's a huge thing about climate and ecosystems and understanding our responsibilities, freedoms, and rights. It's like this hierarchy of needs. This is us, this is the world around us, and we actually have to maintain the world around us. So planting ground nuts after going out and fighting, not fighting because I didn't fight anybody. I climbed a shed and videotaped security guards and got interviewed by plainclothes police officers, and possibly have a document somewhere about who I am as a person and how I might be an environmental terrorist. I'm not, because I'm not, but that's a whole other thing about the federal government and the oversight programs, Project Sitka, the Bill C-51, J Division of the RCMP, things like that. These aren't terrible things to bring up. They're real things, but we don't talk about them because it's a huge cultural taboo, and it's currently like a political system we live in versus indigenous peoples, and it's like, ugh. Anyways, that's a whole other thing. But back to Shubenacadie. Shubenacadie is also the site of one of the biggest reserves in the East Coast. Not biggest reserve, sorry. It's the site of a residential school in the East Coast that was predominantly there to take most of the students of the East Coast, and they weren't students, it was children that were kidnapped and stripped away from their culture and lost their identity, beaten, abused during a financially broke federal government's stupid racist doctrine of genocide to take people and destroy them and then take the land. And fuck, that's what we're still here, and that's what's still going on, even though it's the end of the world, possibly. I'm joking. It's really full of dark humor because it's about potatoes. So back to these ground nuts. They're potatoes that grow in a chain like this. There's photos, and I'm probably going to edit this to throw in things. And it's really hard to focus on one topic because it's so crazy and important. Ecological responsibility means you live somewhere, you have to learn how to take care of there. That's already been going on since before you got there. So there's plants and things around you that you should be aware of. Part of that is, if you look in your fridge right now, if you're lucky enough to have food, you have food in there that you didn't grow. that's been grown by a huge company that's doing patents and monocultures and creating foodways that you're dependent on and have no power over and can be killed by. Look at what's happening in Chile right now, where food access is literally taken away from people living in ghettos and they're fighting police. It can happen. Food deserts exist just north of here, like Marysville. Nobody knows what to eat there, nobody can grow anything, and they live there. So, guess you can die. I'm not saying that literally, please don't. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to grow things and have this ecological responsibility and build a better world to live in, not even just for me. I could be at home right now. This isn't my home. My home's up north, it's on the ocean. I've got my family, I've got my dogs, I've got my whole life there. Except it's not the life I want to be living. And that goes back to the year ago story where I had a house and all this other stuff. Is that fell apart because it wasn't what I was supposed to be doing. It wasn't what I was responsible for. It wasn't my purpose. I'm not saying that I have a purpose or some enlightened yellow toad licking journey. I'm saying I have a responsibility with the knowledge I have. I learned about the world we live in and all the crazy shit that goes on in it, and that means I'm responsible to actually do something about that. The same as if I live in a house right now with downstairs room neighbors, and if I ever heard like an issue going on, like an emergency, I would have a responsibility. I can lie to somebody and say, oh, I didn't hear anything, but then I'm just lying. But the point is if I'm lying, nobody's going to know. But if you're living a lie and you're living in a bad way, that you're not taking care of everything and you're not responsible for everything that you should be. You don't have to be responsible for everything. Other people's actions are their actions. But again, back to the self and power and being able to feed yourself, check your fridge, know what's in there, what grew it, how it's going to affect your body, comes from actually living in the spot you're supposed to be living. So if you live anywhere in the world, anywhere, you have a responsibility to that land. That's the first thing. The second thing is indigenous peoples have a culture outside of the system that you live in. That's what makes them indigenous. That can be the Jukpa in Wuhan and up in the Himalayas. That can be the Australian Aborigines. That can be South America, Mesoamerica, North America. Actually, there's even Laplanders in Europe and things like that, because basically the introduction of a population with an economic stimulus to show up and take land away from other people and say, we're going to live here now, that's a huge thing in this world. It goes on in China, Russia, Canada, the USA, huge South American countries. All I can think of right now is Chile, how it's shaped like a chili, and then Venezuela and things are around here. I think Venezuela's here. Ecuador is like here. Anyways, South America, Mesoamerica, which is just huge amounts of Mexican peoples that are awesome but have to fight. Well, they're actually successful. That's a other thing. Anyways, potatoes. You eat them. They're in everything. Corn. You eat them. They're in everything because they became monocultures. But that's bad because that's the overrepresentation of one species, and it's fragile and it's fucked up and it's going to get us all killed. The same way relying on one country to produce and export everything in the world because they do it the cheapest nearly got us all killed. So, I don't know. It's fucking wild. Anyways, this is 11 minutes of me ranting, and I'm very sorry because this isn't even the full fucking documentary that I've been working on for a year. And I'm sorry for swearing. I hope you had a really good night, and I'm going to put together more of this information. I think it's just easier to do it this way than a big, long Facebook post, because if you're actually interested in this, good things are happening. It's going to be really cool. And hopefully I don't die before I finish it. I'm kidding. It's a really stable and good life for me right now, so I got to be responsible and produce things during that time, because that's how life works. A good life anyways, is you have to do good when you can and take care of yourself when you can. Alright, so take care.